In the last year, I have lost 30 pounds, got a new job, bought a townhouse, dyed my hair blonde, started going on dates, and so many other transformations. And you might be asking, like, how did this happen? I was sitting with my aunt and my aunt's best friend on Christmas Eve, and we start to get into conversations about the future. And it turns into a 3-hour intense therapy session for me. Oh, I also started going to therapy this year. And it was the most transformational night of my entire life. But the question that they asked me that freaked me out and caused me the most alarm was, do you want to be in the same place in 5 years that you are right now? And I said, no. I didn't want to be living in my parents' basement, overweight, single, 35 years old at that point. That woke me the heck up and I started up-leveling my life. I'm so glad I had that conversation, and you need to ask yourself that same question right now. Okay, is this thing on? Hey everyone. So I'm excited to try something new. I've never done a podcast like this where I am sitting on the floor of my bedroom. I recently set up this little meditation corner, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can definitely see it. But I wanted to talk about today a really important topic to me, and that is how 2022 transformed my entire life. Within the span of a year, I lost 30 pounds. I started a new job. I bought a townhouse. I dyed my hair blonde, much blonder than it was. I started going out on dates with people, and I started going to therapy, all within a year. I transformed my life completely. The way that my life looks now in 2023 was like a 180 from what it looked like in late 2021. And I want to talk about today because I actually did a post on TikTok that did really well about this topic, about how I transformed my life. And every time I talk to people in person, they're very inspired by it. And they're like, Jenna, you should talk about this more. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I should. So I decided to do a podcast episode on this specific topic of how I transformed my life. And I wanted to share it also on my YouTube channel. And because that video was filmed literally in my closet in my TikTok, I was like, why not just film this video a little bit more casually in my bedroom? So that's what you're getting today. So what happened? How did I transform my life in 1 year? Well, let's get to the part where we talk about how I got to the place that I was. So obviously because of the pandemic, a lot of people either up-leveled their life or they kind of hit rock bottom. For me, it was I just stayed the same for 2 years, right? Because it started in 2020. This was the end of 2021. And I had moved home right before the pandemic, like summer 2019. My roommate and I at the time, we didn't want to renew the lease. And so I was like, well, I don't really have anywhere else to go. My parents thought maybe they'd be going to somewhere else. So they're like, you should just move home. And I had lived with them for a couple of years in my early 20s. I moved out in my mid 20s. Now this is my late 20s, moving back in with my parents. Supposed to be temporary, then the pandemic hit. And I didn't have a super stable income at the time. So I was like, well, I'll just stay living with my parents. Cut to 2 years into the pandemic, basically, I'm still living with my parents. I actually had just turned 30 at this point that summer. And I was just like not in a good place. I was just like, this is embarrassing. I never told people I was living at home. And so basically I was like, all right, yeah. At the same time, I had been struggling, obviously, for years with my weight. I haven't really talked about this, I guess, too much, but basically, I've always been somewhat overweight. Like, I've never actually been like the right size except for when I was a kid. And so I had tried for over 10 years to lose weight and nothing worked. I really liked working out. I went to a lot of fitness classes. I talk about this in my other video if you want to watch like literally how I lost weight, but I had gained some weight. When I first moved home during the pandemic, my brother was also living with me and he helped me bring, all the stuff that we needed. Like, he would help me work out. He would help make me smoothies. Like, he was really trying to help me. And I really appreciate that. And it was really cool to be able to spend some time with him during the pandemic. But I really think that I once he moved out, I went back to really, really unhealthy ways of living. So the first thing, so I'm just kind of giving you a sense of where I'm at. I was living with my parents. I was self-employed, but not in a good way. Honestly, 2020 was okay for me being self-employed, but by 2021, a lot of my clients, it just wasn't a good financial situation. And so I really thought about getting a job. And so that was something I basically was like, if I don't make enough by December, I'm going to get a job. So that was kind of in my mindset as well. And so that's kind of where I was at. And I want to talk about all the things that started happening after, but that's kind of where I was at. I was also single, obviously, if I'm living at home. And so Christmas rolls around and I get some visitors, which are my aunt and my aunt's best friend, Cheryl. And one night on Christmas Eve, this was like such a transformational night, and they know this about it, and they know this happened. They just started asking me some questions about my life, and it turned into basically a 3-hour come to Jesus therapy session where we talked a lot about my life and where I'm at, where I was going, what I was doing with my life. And this is, again, the end of 2021. And after that night, my life changed. It really woke me up from where I was and where I was, I was just kind of coasting, and I wasn't growing. I wasn't improving my life. And so a lot of truth was spoken that night that I didn't know. A lot of things that I didn't want to admit was said out loud. And I basically at that moment was like, all right, I need to change. I need to move out. I need to, get healthy, and I need to actually get some help with my mental health. So I actually started going to therapy for the first time. That was a big thing that we had decided that night. Was there were some things from my life that I needed to kind of figure out in terms of I don't really want to get into that. It's a little too personal, but I feel like a lot of the things that were holding me back, I could potentially work on in therapy. And I'd never been to therapy before. I feel like I should have, but I didn't. So at that point, I also wanted to, just try it. So I did. So therapy, I ended up going to therapy for about 4 or 5 months in 2022. And I think it did help. I wouldn't say I felt like it was the right solution for me and the right therapist, but I really did think it helped me get over a few things, get unstuck in a few ways. I do think I work better with coaching than I do therapy. I like moving forward, not looking back, but sometimes you have to look back to look forward, right? Okay, so 2022 is starting, and I'm like, all right, I need to get a grip. Like, I need to change my life. So a few things started happening. I started really, really working on my weight loss. I started doing like 10,000 steps a day. I was really focused. Obviously, at the end of 2021, I got my scale, so I started transforming my life that way, losing weight. The next thing that happened was I got a job in March. I actually started working for a friend of mine, Yasna, who I still work for. It's been 1 year, still working with Yasna, doing her content. But that was kind of just me putting it out into the world that I was looking for something. And she's like, you should work for me. So I started getting, and that was full time. Now it's part time, but it was full time at the time. So I got a new job, some financial stability, right? And then I was like, so I started looking for apartments. I was like, okay, I need to move out. Let's look for apartments. But I was like, you know what? I really hate paying rent so much. But thankfully, due to some amazing circumstances, I was like, you know what? I want to buy a townhouse. I want to actually put money into something. So through miracles and miracles, I was able to get a townhouse in July. In about 10-15 minutes from my parents. It's actually the most amazing townhouse. I've never actually done a full tour of this place, but I ended up also, one of my best friends, Mandy, she also was looking for a place, and I said, hey, I'm going to get a 2-bedroom. Do you want to move in with me? So now me and Mandy are roommates. We've been roommates since July, or I guess August. So now I own a townhouse. Literally all this happened within a series of months. Then in August, 2 weeks after I moved in, I decided to dye my hair. I've always wanted to go blonder. I'm a natural blonde, but I decided to dye my hair. It's crazy. I was like, I just want to go really blonde, and I can maybe insert some photos, but it was super blonde when I got it dyed, and everyone loved it on Instagram. So that was pretty cool. So, okay. So where I'm at, I'm losing weight. By August, I hit my goal of 145 pounds. I'm actually up about 10 pounds. I'm at about 155 right now. And I've kind of maintained that for the last 6 months. It's been between 150 and 155. Before I was at 170. So I was definitely a lot higher. So I'm just trying to maintain at this point. I would like to get back down to 145. We'll see if that happens, especially since my brother's getting married and I'm going to be a bridesmaid. So I want to look good for that. And so, all right. So then that leads into October, the last part of this transformation. And that is when I started dating. Whew, this is a topic I've never talked about on the internet, and it's something I don't know how much I want to talk about, but it's something I talk about sometimes on TikTok, so you probably heard me talk about it on there. I have never really dated, ever. I'm 31, and most people are married by now, have kids, and I'm like, late bloomer. I've always wanted to date, but I also felt like I kind of wasn't ready. I spent a lot of my 20s not knowing who I was. I was very much in trying to find friends. Honestly, that was my priority in my 20s. And then, my career and just figuring out my business. And so I was like, all right, I'm at this point where I'm like, all right, I'm 30, 31, maybe it's time to start dating. So I started going on, I've been on dating apps. I just never really done anything with them. And I actually started going on dates in the fall, and it was really not as scary as I thought. But also I tried a few different people just to see, and it was I don't think they're the ones for me, but it was really good to get some practice in. And it's something I'm still, working on. It's something that I have a lot of issues around, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. So that was something that did finally, and I want to talk about how again, it's all about mindset. And this is kind of the summary of why I wanted to do this episode, of why I wanted to talk about this is, a lot of it had to do with my mental mindset. The last year has been a lot of change, which I like, but it was a lot of me accepting that I needed to change. So for specifically dating, I hit this point where I'm like, if I'm single the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. I'm honestly okay with that. And anything else would be fine. So basically it kind of immediately released any anxieties I had around dating, because I'm like, look, worst case scenario, I'm single. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I like being single. I kind of like having my own house. I have my own room. I have everything myself. I'm self-sufficient. I don't need somebody. But if there's someone out there that's a good partner for me, awesome. That's great. I can have that dream wedding that I wanted. I can have kids, all that stuff. That's a bonus, right? So I've kind of just that was a whole mindset shift that I just wasn't expecting to have. And that immediately freed me to get rid of all my anxiety around it. And I just have to constantly tell myself that. But I want to go back to the question that transformed my life. So on that night in 2021, a question was asked, and the question was, in 5 years from now, you are in exactly the same place as you are now. Would you be happy? And I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to be single at 35, living at home in my parents' basement, financially unstable, overweight, single. I didn't want any of this stuff. All the things I was at that moment, I was like, I don't want to be this in 5 years. And that's what really led this transformation of my life. And every day I ask myself that question, in 1 year, do you want to be where you're at? And honestly, it changed everything. Everything that I was at has changed in 1 year. And it was just me picking up and being like, all right, I got to make this happen as soon as possible, finding ways to make it happen. I realized I learned so much from this experience, because it made me realize I was in my own way. Things come when you are open to them, you will be able to change. You just have to mentally be there and be willing to do it, because there's, people talk about this with coaching and therapy. If someone's not willing to change, they won't. As much help as you get them, a drug addict is not going to change if they don't want to change. Somebody who, doesn't want to get help for themselves won't change. I was at a point where I didn't really want to change. I did inside, but it wasn't until I was like, look, you could be stuck this way forever, that I was like, oh, that motivated me to change. And I think a lot of people are scared to make that change because part of them likes where they're at. And a part of me liked where I was at. I could be at home. I could be, reliant on my parents, which I actually kind of enjoyed. Being overweight meant I could eat crappy and it's usually really delicious food. Being single meant I didn't have to worry about, the insecurities or the fears. So there was a lot of reasons that I was the way I was, but in order to level up or go and create a higher level life for yourself, obviously this podcast, the optimization toolbox, optimizing, up-leveling your life, you have to make some scary changes, right? I'm reading this book called The Tools right now. If you've ever watched the movie Stutz on Netflix, I highly recommend it. He talks about in the book going through the dark and painful times actually allows you to grow from that. So getting through that awful, painful thing actually is the way to happiness and the way to growth. I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it. And it really changed the way that I think about it, because I was like, oh, I was living in this comfort zone of, hey, I don't have to spend, I was eating cereal every morning. That was like one of the biggest things for me I had to change. It was like monotonous, just eating away. And it was changing that and changing a lot of the things in my life that I was able to actually change, because I changed a small habit, and that if doing that every day impacted my entire year. So starting small. The other one, getting a job. I just told somebody one time that I was looking for a job and I got it. It was just it came to me. And I don't know if you believe in manifestation. I don't know what I believe about manifestation, but I definitely think putting things out there into the world tells the world that you're looking for something. When I talked about dating, I did a post on Facebook, and some of you may have seen it. I limited it only to women in my area. And I said, I'm looking for someone. These are what I'm looking for if you know of anyone. And guys, I got more likes and comments on that post than I'd gotten on anything I'd ever done in years. And it was because people were willing to help me. They wanted to help me. They were supporting my journey. And I think for myself, just knowing that I was putting things out into the world that I knew people, the people that I knew and the people that I've gathered in my life have really impacted me for the positive, because for most of my life, I struggle with friendships. I've talked about this a little bit, and I'm really excited to have a friendship expert on the podcast soon. But it wasn't until I was 24 that I actually found a good group of friends. And I'd spent most of my middle, high school, and college years with some friends, but not a big group, and not ones that I felt like were long term, because again, high school, you're done in 4 years. Then you go off to college, you're done in 4 years. Adult friends, you can have forever, right? You can have high school and college friends too. It was very hard to keep them for me afterwards. I can count on my hands the people I still stay in touch with from high school and college. And it's because, they're friends kind of out of necessity, versus the friends that you actually make in the real world are a little different. Anyways, going off topic. So I just wanted to share that, that was the question that I asked myself. I don't want to be in the same place in 5 years. So I was able to start every single day making the choice not to live that way. Hey, how am I going to live in 5 years? I'm going to be someone that goes on dates. I'm going to be someone that takes care of my body. I'm going to be someone that makes enough money to be able to afford a house for myself. And just making that one mindset shift really did change me and transform me in ways that I couldn't even believe. I was looking at a different person in August when I moved. I was like, I look different. I feel different. People could literally see, I was just naming all the things that had changed, and people were like, oh my gosh, you're really, really making a big, big change for yourself. And I think that allowed me to be more open to everything. So anyways, I just wanted to make this episode because I've shared this story a little bit, but not in full online. I've shared it a lot with people in my life, but not, again, with my online community. And I want to do more stuff like this where I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts and feelings and opinions. I do this kind of on social in short form, but not in long form. And there's a reason that I have a podcast. I like to talk. I like to share my stories and my wisdom, specifically on whether it's marketing or optimizing your life. I've been doing a lot on wellness lately. And this is kind of how I talk in normal life. And I feel like sometimes I don't always share that part online. So anyways, I hope that this inspired you in some way to make some changes. I'm hoping to do more episodes on some of these topics I'm talking about today. Specifically, the things that are helping you improve your life. And I hope that you guys enjoyed me sitting here on the floor of my bedroom meditating. And anyways, I hope that you guys have a great day. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.